The film opens within the walls of a convent, with Sister Mary, a young nun, engaged in prayer. Following her devotions, she covertly enters the quarters of a senior nun to pilfer the keys, intending to flee. Unable to unlock the gate, Sister Mary resorts to squeezing through its bars. Yet, in her escape attempt, she is ensnared by one of three hooded figures in pursuit, resulting in a harrowing injury to her leg and a cry of agony. Overwhelmed by pain, she loses consciousness, only to awaken later to the terrifying realization that she has been buried alive. Sister Cecilia, a devout young woman, arrived in the serene Italian countryside for a new role offered by Father Tedeschi. Welcomed warmly, she was introduced to an exclusive convent where ailing nuns spent their final days. Guided by Sister Isabel, though greeted with apparent irritation, Cecilia was shown to her room. Despite Isabel's subtle discouragement, Cecilia remained resolute in her decision. As she settled in, she struck up a friendship with Sister Gwen before preparing for the upcoming ceremony. Delighted to reunite with Father Tedeschi during the event, Cecilia later engaged in conversation with him, learning of his deep affection for the convent. In turn, she shared her own past, recounting a near-death experience at age 12 when she fell through ice and was revived after 7 minutes. Grateful for her second chance, Cecilia felt called to serve a higher purpose, leading her to eagerly accept Father Tedeschi's invitation to join the esteemed Italian convent. After the ceremony, Cecilia found herself in the bathroom when she heard a distant cry echoing through the corridors of the convent. Intrigued, she followed the sound to discover a nun kneeling in distress, her tears mingling with prayers. Attempting to offer solace, Cecilia was startled when the nun turned, revealing a hauntingly featureless visage. Suddenly, the Reverend Mother intervened, ushering Cecilia to the altar and presenting a large, weathered nail said to be from the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, showing Cecilia a hand marked with a hole akin to Christ's. The Reverend Mother proclaimed it a symbol of absolution for her sins. Overwhelmed, Cecilia fainted at the sight. Upon regaining consciousness, she sought counsel from the cardinal, only to be met with silence. Desperate, she called out, but her pleas were met with a sudden onslaught of arms enveloping her, binding her as hooded figures loomed ominously. Gripped by terror, Cecilia woke from her nightmarish ordeal, her gaze fixed on the door where a shadowy figure approached, its presence unsettling. As she turned on the light, she found no one there. During breakfast, the Reverend Mother addressed the group, while Cecilia engaged in light-hearted chatter with Gwen. The Reverend Mother, observing their behavior, gently reprimanded the two young sisters. This incident marked their initiation into the convent's norms. Despite their responsibilities, Cecilia and Gwen found joy in each other's company as they diligently carried out their tasks. They tenderly cared for an elderly nun in her final moments. Cecilia caught Sister Isabel's gaze, but it was soon obscured by a passing sheet. Later that night, Cecilia was surprised when an older nun unexpectedly trimmed her hair. Though puzzled, Cecilia escorted the nun back to the infirmary without dwelling on the matter. Before departing, she noticed a scar on the nun's feet, shaped like a cross. The following day, Cecilia found herself bathing alongside the other young nuns, while Gwen recounted her journey to joining the convent. Gwen shared her past of living with an abusive ex-boyfriend, whom she eventually stood up to before seeking refuge in the convent. Witnessing the peaceful life of the nuns with their basic needs provided for, Gwen felt drawn to their way of life, even though her devotion to God didn't match that of her fellow sisters. As Gwen spoke, Cecilia listened intently, but suddenly felt unwell. She excused herself for a checkup, during which she noticed a mysterious figure lingering outside. While watching, a sudden movement startled her as a bird dropped in front of her. Cecilia found herself summoned to the cardinal's office, where she faced a daunting interrogation. The cardinal probed into whether she had broken her vows prior to entering the convent, while Father Tedeschi, misunderstanding Cecilia's confusion for reluctance, urged her to confess. Despite the pressure, Cecilia staunchly maintained her innocence, asserting that she had never violated her commitment to God. This declaration stunned everyone present. Father Tedeschi, perplexed, questioned whether Cecilia had engaged in any intimate relations before. However, Cecilia, who had never been romantically involved and remained a virgin, adamantly denied such allegations. To their astonishment, the doctor's examination revealed Cecilia's pregnancy. The cardinal and Father Tedeschi, interpreting this revelation in a divine light, rejoiced, believing Cecilia to be a modern-day Virgin Mary. As they celebrated the perceived miracle bestowed upon them, Sister Isabel and Gwen noticeably lacked the joy that filled the room. As Cecilia progressed into her second trimester, she began experiencing peculiar occurrences. Amidst a bout of vomiting, she discovered that one of her teeth had unexpectedly fallen out. Upon entering the dining area, she was met with warm smiles from everyone except Gwen, who remained seated until Cecilia was settled. A senior nun kindly handed Cecilia her breakfast, cautioning her against excessive movement in her pregnant state. While Gwen outwardly expressed frustration at the sister's strictness toward Cecilia, her concern for her friend weighed heavily on her mind. After finishing breakfast, Cecilia relaxed in the bathtub, only to be startled when someone forcefully pushed her underwater. To her horror, she discovered it was Isabel, who relentlessly attempted to drown her. In the nick of time, a senior nun rushed in with assistance, pulling Isabel away as she angrily shouted about feeling deserving of Cecilia's fate. The doctor promptly examined Cecilia, reassuring Father Tadeschi that the baby was unharmed, yet Cecilia remained deeply shaken and bewildered by the attack. She recounted Isabel's disturbing words, expressing her confusion over Isabel's jealousy-fueled actions. Father Tadeschi offered solace, attributing Isabel's behavior to envy and assuring Cecilia of her safety. However, still reeling from the trauma, Cecilia insisted on seeking a second opinion from another doctor outside the convent. Despite Cecilia's concerns about her puking one of her teeth, Father Tadeschi dismissed her issue as insignificant, insisting she's perfectly fine. Following the incident involving Isabel, Cecilia's vigilance heightened, casting suspicion upon her fellow nuns. While traversing the corridor one day, she caught sight of two nuns gazing intently from a window. Suddenly, a figure leapt from the rooftop, and as Cecilia rushed to investigate, dread gripped her. It was Isabel. As they solemnly proceeded with the other nuns to lay Isabel to rest, Gwen leaned in to Cecilia, urging her to awaken to the truth. Trust within the convent was a fragile facade. Gwen, never one to confide in others, viewed Cecilia's ordeal as further evidence of concealed truths held by the convent's elders. Father Tadeschi intervened upon noticing their conversation, inquiring about their distress. However, Gwen erupted, condemning the indifference towards Isabel's demise, lashing out at the institution and its leaders until she was restrained by Father Tadeschi and Deacon Enzo. Cecilia sat on her bed when a picture frame on the wall loosened, nearly falling. Behind it, she discovered writing a Bible verse in Italian. It was 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. Curious, she sought out the verse in her English Bible. As she read, Satan himself often masquerades as an angel of light. Cecilia's skepticism about Gwen's claims began to wane. Quietly, she ventured into Gwen's room, finding it empty. Undeterred, she slipped into the cardinal's office, rifling through her own files. Among them was a newspaper clipping detailing the accident she narrowly avoided. Startled by a distant scream, Cecilia cautiously traced its origin. Peering through a keyhole, tears welled in her eyes as she witnessed a nun, devoid of a discernible face, severing Gwen's tongue. Backing away, Cecilia was startled as a sickly nun covered her mouth, preventing outcry. It was the same nun who had taken scissors to her hair. With a chilling smile, she presented Cecilia with a cross wrapped with her hair. Desperate, Cecilia implored the nun to aid in their escape, only to be met with a grim warning. No one leaves the convent. One morning, nurses were jolted awake by the piercing cries of Cecilia. Hastening to her room alongside Father Tadeschi, they were met with a distressing sight: Cecilia heavily bleeding. With desperation in her voice, Cecilia implored Father Tadeschi for aid, fearing the specter of death. Swiftly, Father Tadeschi made the decision to transport her to the nearest hospital. Yet it soon became apparent that this was all a ruse. A vigilant nurse, keeping watch by Cecilia's bedside, detected an odd scent emanating from the blood. Investigating further, she unearthed a hidden bag beneath the bed, containing not human blood, but that of a deceased chicken. En route to the hospital, Father Tadeschi received a call revealing Cecilia's deceit. She had feigned a miscarriage as a means of evasion. Realizing she had been exposed, Cecilia attempted to flee from the vehicle. However, weakened and unable to muster speed, she was swiftly apprehended by Father Tadeschi. Returning to the convent, Cecilia faced a stern reprimand from a senior nun, who vigorously bathed her while admonishing her for her attempted escape. When Cecilia dared to retort, the nun administered a sharp slap to her face. Subsequently, Cecilia found herself bound to a wheelchair positioned before the altar depicting the crucifixion. Father Tadeschi, adorned in gloves, retrieved a nail from the crucifixion display, presenting it to Cecilia while elucidating his long-standing scheme. Prior to his ordination, Father Tadeschi had been a geneticist. Leveraging his expertise in genetics, he had embarked on a clandestine project, extracting DNA from the crucifixion nail to fashion a new Jesus Christ. Despite 2 decades of failed attempts, Cecilia's involvement marked a turning point, culminating in the successful creation of a new Virgin Mary destined to give birth to the reimagined Jesus. Father Tadeschi led Cecilia down to the basement, where he revealed rows of jars containing fetuses. Among them, only a handful appeared normal, while the majority bore grotesque abnormalities. Father Tadeschi ushered Cecilia into another chamber, where his assistant, Deacon Enzo, forcibly immobilized her leg. With a cruel intent, Father Tadeschi proceeded to sear Cecilia's feet with a cross-shaped branding iron. Subsequently, Cecilia was confined to a room, ensuring she would not attempt another escape. In the final months of her pregnancy, Cecilia conversed with the cardinal as she extracted a nail from her finger. The doctor attended to her baby once more before departing, leaving her in the care of the Reverend Mother. While the Reverend Mother was engrossed in monitoring the baby, Cecilia silently seized the crucifix and beat her with it. Exiting her room, Cecilia suppressed the impending screams of labor pains. Meanwhile, the cardinal, puffing on a cigarette as he observed the choir's performance, was unaware as Cecilia stealthily approached. She dispatched him by strangling him with her rosary. Dr. Gallo stumbled upon the scene and fled in terror. Rushing to the basement, Cecilia doused Father Tadeschi's laboratory with ethanol and ignited a lighter just as Father Tadeschi appeared. In the midst of her pain, Cecilia bent over, giving Father Tadeschi a moment to intervene before she could set the lab ablaze. Reacting swiftly, she struck Father Tadeschi with a flask and fled, locking him inside the lab. However, Father Tadeschi seized her by the hair, preventing her escape. In a desperate attempt to break free, Cecilia grasped at his fingers, but he firmly held her back. With resolve, Cecilia dropped her lighter, igniting a blaze that consumed both Father Tadeschi and the laboratory. Yet Father Tadeschi managed to escape, breaking through the door, while Cecilia descended the stairs, discovering herself in the catacombs beneath the convent. Frantically, she searched for an exit until pausing momentarily. Fear gripped Cecilia as she heard a voice calling out to her, scanning the chamber in trepidation. Her heart raced as she illuminated the space, revealing Gwen's body. Hastily, she fled the chamber, seeking an escape route until she saw daylight filtering through a hole large enough for her to crawl through. Nevertheless, Father Tadeschi intercepted her before she could flee, initiating his chance as he tried to extract her baby. Despite enduring excruciating pain, Cecilia summoned her strength, seizing the crucifixion nail and plunging it into Father Tadeschi. With sheer determination, she crawled through the opening to escape. Outside, she collapsed onto her knees, her scream piercing the air as she brought her baby into the world. Cecilia recoiled in horror at the sight before her, though the details of the baby remained obscured. The chilling realization gripped her that her child had transformed into something monstrous, evident from its unsettling human-like gurgles. Without hesitation, Cecilia tore at the umbilical cord with her teeth and seized a nearby rock, unleashing her terror as she relentlessly struck down the abomination.
And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Comment down below what movies do you like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.